Hey guys, how's it going? My name is Jason. I'm a financial advisor with the Premier Client Group. On the side, I run this YouTube page and a Facebook group called Financial Education for Retirement, just to try to help foster financial education in anybody I can reach. But let's get into the video today on revocable trusts or living trusts. So, just to start off, trusts usually get a bad rap. They're thought of as relation to trust fund babies, the ultra wealthy, extremely rich people, whatever it might be. You think of them as, oh, somebody has a trust fund set up, they're going to get paid out for life. It's going to go to their kids and their kids and their kids. It's just going to keep going forever. And that's how generational wealth really takes advantage of trust. Well, that is correct to an extent, but trusts are also for people that are not rich. Trusts are just a vessel to hold assets that do not have beneficiaries directly attached to them. Now, if you haven't heard the word beneficiary before, that's because you probably don't have an IRA, a 401k, a 403b, or something that makes you have a beneficiary. But all a beneficiary is somebody that is directly related to your asset. And if you pass away, the asset goes directly towards them. So again, beneficiaries are extremely useful to have, but some assets don't allow you to have a beneficiary, and that's where this type of trust comes into play. So you might be asking yourself, why not just a will? Isn't that what a will is for? And yes, a will distributes assets after you're dead. However, a will also goes through the probate process. The probate process is a really annoying process in which assets that do not have a beneficiary have to go through the court process before they get to your designated person. So every single asset in a will has to make it through probate one way or another. And it could take months, it could take years, and it's just going to be extraordinarily annoying for your heirs to deal with after you pass away. And putting assets into a trust that don't have a beneficiary completely eliminates this probate process, which is so not only satisfying for your heirs, but it's satisfying to know that your assets are going to go where they want. Because with a will, you can also try to elect against a will. So an old spouse, a kid that you really didn't want to give assets to, they can elect against the will to try to receive some of your assets. While if you have a trust with a beneficiary, you can avoid this and make sure that your assets go exactly where you want them to go when you pass away. Now, just a couple assets that you might think about putting into a trust are brokerage accounts with no transfer on death or no beneficiary listed, which you can't list a beneficiary to a brokerage account. It has to be either joint tenants, transfer on death, or something of that sort. So that could be in a trust, a savings account, a checkings account, real estate, ownership in an LLC. There are so many different items. There are so many different properties that you can put into a trust that don't have a beneficiary that would go through the probate process otherwise, or have to be in a will, which would still go through probate. So now that you know what exactly a trust is for and how you can actually use a trust as a non-billionaire, we'll get into the difference between a revocable trust and an irrevocable trust. We'll focus more on a revocable trust, which is called a living trust, but an irrevocable trust is really for those trying to avoid estate tax. They're completely relinquishing control of their assets in order to avoid tax when they pass it down to their heirs. Now, if you have less than around $13 million to your name, you're probably not going to be looking at an irrevocable trust. So just for this video, we're going to be focusing on solely revocable trusts, also known as living trusts. So diving in a little deeper to the revocable trust or the living trust, the first and major thing about this trust is that if you put assets in this trust, you still have control of them while you're alive. With an irrevocable trust, once you put an asset in there, you cannot touch it. It is completely gone and it is very hard to amend. That is why it avoids estate tax. However, with a living trust, you're not trying to avoid tax. You're just trying to make sure that your assets go to what beneficiary you want and when. Now, the three main people related to a trust are the grantor, which is the person setting up the trust, the trustee, the person who holds the legal title to the trust or watches over the trust, and the beneficiary, the person who holds the equitable title to the trust. Now, with a living trust or a revocable trust, again, the same thing, the grantor is usually the trustee. They usually have power on to where the assets go. Well, the trustee also has to act in the benefit of the beneficiary, so the grantor being the trustee sometimes can be a little confusing, but at the same point, the beneficiary is usually not going to have access to the assets in a revocable trust until the grantor or the trustee, if they're the same person, dies. Now, since the grantor has all this control, the best part about this living trust, the best part about the revocable trust, is that you can change it as long as you're alive, you can change whatever you want to go and you can change the beneficiary a million times. There are no limitations. It's just like a will. You can change a will as many times as you want. Now, again, it can be a little bit confusing. You have to hire lawyers and it might be of a cost, but there are no limitations to how many times you can change this type of trust. And that what makes it so appealing to people who want to make sure their assets go exactly where they want them to go. Now, although it's a little annoying to hear that there might be fees when associating yourself with a trust, there are also fees going through the probate process. So just setting up the trust and changing the trust over time, it might cost you a little bit, but it's going to cost you a ton more usually to go through the probate process than it is when compared to setting up a trust. Now, just diving into probate a little more. The average probate time is 6 to 9 months. That's how long your executor has to spend making sure your will is carried out and making sure your assets go exactly where you'd like. While if you just set up a trust, it could eliminate so much time and have your assets go exactly where you want without the possibility of somebody electing against the trust. There are some community property states that make sure your wife might get half, but again, there are ways where you can have your assets go exactly where you want, and the trust is one of them. The will can be contested, it will go through probate, and that time period is extraordinarily elongated and can really hurt your beneficiaries and your heirs sometimes. Now, if you're looking to perhaps give to maybe multiple generations, or maybe you have a lot of money, maybe you have millions and millions of dollars, you might want to look into an irrevocable trust because if you can avoid that state tax, it's a great thing to avoid when tax rates can go all the way up to 40%. You do everything in your power to avoid them. However, most of you guys are going to be looking at this revocable or living trust just to make sure your assets go exactly where you'd like. Otherwise, guys, if you have any more questions that you'd like to see made into videos, drop a comment, subscribe, but definitely check out the Facebook group Financial Education for Retirement. It's run by myself, and there's certified financial planners as members willing to answer questions pretty much any time of the day. But have a great rest of your day, guys, and hopefully you enjoyed the video.